After studying this module, you shall be able to know the changes in business environment, different factors that go into influencing the changes in business environment, how corporate response and adjust to these changes, and lastly, changes in Indian business environment. We shall commence our topic by overviewing the changes in the business environment. Business environment of country is never constant or static. It is always in a dynamic state and is affected by a number of factors. There are factors that affect or constitute business environment and that keep on interacting with each other over the period of time. Except in case of emergency or crisis, changes in business environment are not sudden but gradual. Many business organizations throughout the world are able to predict or forecast the changes on the basis of their wisdom and experience. Such organizations are able to reposition themselves and exploit the opportunities unfolded by changing business environment. On the other hand, those who are not able to understand the present environment and anticipate future changes face the danger of marginalized competition. Understanding of changing business environment and predicting it is at least not an easy task. The task required a cadre of professional business economists and managers who have thorough knowledge of the behavior of macroeconomic variables and can estimate the impact of their change on business environment conditions. Not only that, an appropriate understanding of the interaction between the different layers of business environment is essential, but at the very same time need to understand the relationship between economic and non-economic environment needed. The various facts, data and trends have to be carefully studied and analyzed and researched to scan the business environment over a particular period of time. Unfortunately, most of the firms don't have adequate resources and the expertise in this regard and depend upon the reports of the rating agencies, consultants, newspapers and journals, economic research institutions or even on the intuitive understanding of a few top level managers. We shall now discuss the factors influencing changes in business environment. The dynamics of business environment can be understood in terms of the following important factors that trigger changes in business environment. At a particular time, some or all the factors could be worked, but the impact on the environment would depend on the extent of change and intensity of impact. Changing government policies. In every country, government affects business environment in various ways, mainly as promoter, entrepreneur, planner and consumer. Any changes in government policy in each of these roles have a profound impact on the macroeconomics as well as the sectorial business environment. Change in fiscal policy affect expenditure levels and the structure of taxation, which affects costs and prices, and monetary changes impact the cost, that is the rate of interest, and availability of credit, that is liquidity, which influences the cost of capital of business firms. Monetary policy changes influence the financial capability of the business firms. Changes in policy generally impacts economic growth. Public debts policy affect the supply of savings and aggregate level of demand for the private sector. Often, government has very much coordinated approach in designing monetary, fiscal and public debt policy in terms of a set of predetermined objectives like high growth rate, controlling high inflation, promoting environmental issues and correcting regional disparities. At the very same time, government policies are also designed to impact specific sectors. Government undertakes investment and disinvestment program in specific segment of different industries, affecting their competitiveness and growth rate. In India, government adopts various policies for specific sectors like infrastructure, agriculture, small scale industries, core industries, exports, textiles and many more. Reserve Bank of India, in consultation with the government, decides qualitative credit controls under which it changes the flow of credit to specific industrial sectors according to national priorities. Variation in the growth rate. Performance of various sectors in any economy determines the growth rate. A growth rate of about 7% or more leads to appreciable increase in income and aggregate demand. However, changing growth rate from year to year brings about corresponding changes in business environment and business firms need to adjust to the changing scenario. Along with the overall growth rate, the sectoral growth from different segments like agriculture, infrastructure and banking also changes depending upon the sectoral environment conditions. These different sectors of the economy are, however, not segmented or independent. Each sector of the economy has both forward and backward linkages. Changing economic conditions in one sector tends to affect conditions in related sectors. Changes in market structure and competition. In every economy, different product and industry group face different market structures depending upon the state of competition. The market structure basically depends upon the many factors and number of buyers and sellers in the market, freedom of entry and exit, independence between firms, mobility of resources and the availability of market information. Markets for product like detergents and ready-made garments are monopolistically competitive. On the other hand, an oligopolistic condition prevails in market for automobiles, aviation, refrigerators and air conditioning, etc. Trade liberalization and import competition are further impacting the competition level. On similar hand, policy of government towards foreign direct investment, that is FDI, MNC and public sector undertakings are making economy more competitive or more efficient. Business speculation and expected future. Changing variables of business environment generates many future expectations and many speculations. And individuals and business firm on the basis of industry past trends and current scenario anticipate future changes in a number of variables such as bank rate, inflation, exchange rate, taxes, government borrowing, advertisement expenditure and many more. When there is a future expectation about inflation, economic undertakings tend to prepone their purchases. It tends to bring inflation from future to the present stage. In similar way, an expected increase in rate of interest may weaken the current demand for fixed interest bearing assets or investments. In the same way, firms are able to foresee substantial increase in government borrowing and can anticipate liquidity shortages and changes in the rate of interest in future. Changes in current and future demand leads to establishment of markets for future and forward in commodities. Now, the markets for derivatives are emerging fast in a developing country like India. Changes in tastes, preferences and consumer attitudes. Major role in product designing, delivery and accompanying services is played by consumers' tastes and attitudes. In highly competitive market, professionally managed firms are customer focused and closely monitor any changes that take place in consumer perception attitude towards their products. Such consumer related factors are subject to changes over a period of time. Main factors that bring about changes in taste and preferences are education, geographical mobility, fashion trends and availability of products. Pattern of consumer tastes also changes as his age advances, but among younger age groups, these days major changes over relatively shorter period of time may be very much expected. A large number of youngsters quickly initiated into smoking and drinking in recent time period. Consumers' perception attitudes and lifestyles are greatly influenced by advertising and results in changing tastes and preferences. The changes on the consumer side induced changes in product, packaging and presentation, making the environment more competitive. Changes in pattern of foreign investment and imports. In the present age is the age of globalization and interdependence between countries. Most of the economies of the world are opening their borders for imports and paying special attention to export development. This exposure to foreign products and foreign business firms can lead to large changes in the business environment. Imports not only add to competition but also create healthy environment in which domestic firms of the country learn about new products and technologies. Differences in the prices of imported and domestically produced goods pose several challenges to the domestic firms to become efficient to stay in the market. With the progress of import liberalization, business environment gets more vibrant and dynamic over a period of time. Foreign firms bring not only new products and brands but also new management, philosophies, culture, work ethos and performance standards. MNCs compete with domestic companies both in home and in international markets and establish new benchmarks. External economic shocks. International economic changes get transmitted in economies that have high degree of global linkages. Problems like inflation, stagnation and unemployment transmit like infectious diseases in global interdependent economies. The cases like European debt crisis in recent time period affect international trade, tourism, foreign investment and investor confidence on global front. In similar way, war between two countries, civil strife lead to affect global economy. The countries whose trade and investment are concentrated in few narrow group geographical locations are more likely to be adversely affected. Non-economic factors. There are large varieties of non-economic factors which can destabilize the business environment, and business firms can do very little about these factors. The best they can do is to adjust to such changes over a period of time. Social environment of business is slow changing, but social tensions and communal violence can trigger disturbance in internal law and order situation and can affect smooth functioning of business. Major industrial accidents and natural calamities like earthquakes and floods, outbreak of epidemics can have a destabilizing effect on the business. Recent natural calamities in Uttarakhand and Jammu and Kashmir have caused tremendous damage to the economy. Let us throw some light on the corporate response and adjustment. All of the factors that we read are capable of bringing changes in the macroeconomics as well as sectoral environment of business firm, depending upon the magnitude, direction and duration of impact. All these factors impact different macroeconomic variables and interrelationship, making the environment volatile, less comprehensive and unpredictable. There are large number of companies, those are unable to understand the current state and dynamic of business environment. But there are many professional firms that are always set to build projections on the basis of their predictions on current trends. Although right quantum and direction of adjustment is not an easy task. At the very same time, overreaction and underreaction both can lead to expensive and painful deviation for firms' planned goals. Before deciding a particular responsive action, it is necessary for every firm to find out which causative factors will affect which component of business environment. Firms that are able to adjust to the business environment changes reduce risk and uncertainty and gain competitive advantage over the others. On the other hand, failure to make timely adjustment may seriously affect profitability, competitiveness and even hit market share of the company. Firms that have sufficient time to readjust and reorient their operations well in advance and are able to exploit many new opportunities and meet the challenges that toss up changes in business environment. Policies must have sufficient flexibility to enable the firm to adjust to the changing environment. Unfortunately, there are large number of firms, those are willing or unable to make adjustment to environment changes. There are number of reasons behind that. First is the momentum and flow of business along a preset business plan that does not permit interruption by way if of adjustment. Secondly, the current state of business environment and the anticipated changes are subject to varying and even conflicting interpretations, and no conclusive action is possible. Thirdly, a possible wrong adjustment can be fatal, and no corporate house or group of top management is willing to volunteer for risky initiative. Finally, most of the business environment changes are considered to be very much minor and reversible, so that no response is required. Nevertheless, firms prefer to re-strategize or restructure when changes in environment are clear, dominant and durable. Firms have to readjust their goals, plans and policies and the implementation design. At the very same time, they have to plan changes in their liquid assets, capital and investment returns ratio. All the factors of business environment need to be scanned carefully so that response and adjustment of the firms is appropriate. We shall now discuss the concept of environmental scanning. In environmental scanning, we turn to the methods and techniques employed by different organizations to monitor the environment and gather data at various levels to derive information about opportunities and threats that are going to affect their business. Different factors need to be considered in environmental scanning. The external factors in which business organization exists consist of variety of factors. These factors are events, trends, issues and expectations of different interested parties. Changes in the world of work can give rise to new risk areas or change the way that occupational safety and health needs to be managed. This has implications for workplaces themselves and also for the occupational safety and health system. For this reason, the changing world of work has been a priority topic for the agency. Example of the past like Union Carbide factory accident at Bhopal was an event. The trend was that arose on part of regulatory authorities to be conscious and safety. The issue is raising concern about environment. Sources of information for environment scanning. There are various sources of information for collecting data for environmental scanning, and that can be classified in different ways. They could be classified as formal and informal, written or verbal, external and internal. Some of the important types of source of information are as follows. 1. Secondary data from sources like different publications, magazines, journals, books, annual reports and so on. 2. There are internal sources like company documents, company employees and database etc. 3. Mass media sources like radio, television, internet etc. 4. External sources like customers, suppliers and government agencies and so on. 5th, formal studies conducted by market researcher, consultant, educational institutions etc. Let us move on and analyze the changing dimensions of Indian business environment. Over the period of time, dimensions of business environment in India have changed widely. Either we talk about political, economic, social, technological or legal environment. Some of the dimensions that have changed widely have been discussed below. Political environment. When we talk about Indian political environment, it includes factors like a political system, type of government, center-state relations, public opinion, law and order, nature of government policies towards business, particularly those related to taxation, industrial relations, regulation of business and industry, and foreign trade regulations. In the period prior to liberalization, India's annual growth rate was low at around 3.5%. Only a few licenses were given out for important sectors like steel, electrical power, energy and communication, and these license owners built up powerful corporate empires. License Raj established the self-perpetuating bureaucracy and still exists in India, and corruption flourished under this system. Government of India began the process of privatization in 1991. The purpose of privatization was to improve the efficiency of public undertakings and to raise funds for public investment. As a result, financial institutions have become more active. Working culture is improving and management is being professionalized. There is improvement in technology, better investment behavior of Indian entrepreneurs, and companies are aware of the significance of human capital. The banking, financial services and insurance and airline sectors have become extremely competitive but are in need of reforms. There have been some negative effects like curtailed growth in some industries, reduced employment opportunities due to adoption of capital intensive technology, sellouts and takeovers by foreign companies, losing markets and declining capacity utilization. Economic factors. The Indian economy is currently the 9th largest in the world by nominal GDP and the 3rd largest by the purchasing power parity called PPP. Over a period of time, Indian economy adopted economic liberalization and started to follow free market principles, and it included opening of India for international trade and investment, deregulation, initiation of privatization, tax reforms and inflation controlling measures. The fruits of liberalization reached their peak in the year 2007 as India reached its highest GDP growth rate of 9%. With this, India became the second fastest growing economy in the world, next only to China. However, dealing with powerful lobbies such as the trade unions and farmers or contentious issues such as reforming labor laws and reducing agricultural subsidies are some areas that still need economic reforms. Socio-cultural environment. It covers factors such as social customs, traditions, culture, lifestyle, attitude of people, saving and spending patterns, size of population, demographic profile, education level, occupational structure, trade unions and other factors that influence and describe the behavioral characteristics typical of the people. It would also include the corporate social responsibility initiatives undertaken by companies. CSR in India is in a nascent stage. It is still one of the least understood initiatives in the Indian development sector. A lack of understanding, inadequately trained personnel, non-availability of authentic data, and specific information on the kinds of CSR activities, coverage, policy, etc. further adds to the reach and effectiveness of CSR program. However, the situation is changing as CSR is coming out of the purview of doing social good and is becoming a business necessity. Marketing environment. In India, due to satellite TV and other media exposure, customers are becoming more selective and demanding, even in the rural sector. Green revolution and creation of industrial zones in rural areas has ushered in a rich farmer class with an appetite for conspicuous consumption. Sanand, a small town in Gujarat where the nano factory is located, has become one of the booming entrepreneurial centers and boasts of number of high-end car models sold in India. It has attracted commitments of billions of US dollars in investment from some of world's largest companies. The Indian middle class is fast becoming used to Western culture. With increasing disposable incomes, a larger middle class has been created whose needs have gone beyond the basic roti kapda or makan. The sheer number of consumers has created a huge market for all kinds of goods. Hence, the booming sales of consumer durables and vehicles. This has created a huge problem of managing traffic and providing adequate parking place for vehicles in already congested urban areas. Let us recapitulate what we have learned so far. Business environment of country is a dynamic state and is affected by a number of factors. There are factors that affect or constitute business environment and that keep on interacting with each other over a period of time. There are factors like government policies, growth rate, market structure, tastes, preferences and attitudes that are going to influence changes in business environment. Corporate houses respond and adjust according to changing dimensions. Environmental scanning is a new method and technique to derive information about opportunities and threats. Over the period of time, huge changes in Indian business environment is being observed.